I spend at least 2 hours a day doing content every day. So that'd be 7 days a week. We work with a lot of content creators, like as ambassadorships. We like to do a lot of collaboration. It's, I think, something you can't ignore nowadays. If you told me 5 years ago, I'm going to be spending 2 hours a day, like negotiating with influencers and like editing shoes, I'd be like, you're crazy. But it's a reality of life in today's era, and you have to meet customers where they are. I just went out on street corners and I put up a rack and I was like, I'm selling clothes. And it was not glamorous. It was long days. I would sit on a street corner for 6 to 8 hours and I would just let people look at the clothes and then bring them up right there on the spot. It costs your time. And time is expensive. Do not get me wrong on that. But if you are a struggling startup and you are trying to make profitability on that first sale, on every sale, your time is what you're going to have to give.
Welcome to the DTC Insider podcast, where online business owners come to find actionable tips and tactics to grow their businesses. Now, here's your host, Brian Roisentul.
Hey, welcome to another episode. I'm Brian Roisentul, your host as always, and I'm super excited to speak with Remington Fraser, founder of the Reverie, a company redefining what it means to lead with empathy in e-commerce. Before launching her brand, Remington worked as an attorney, but her entrepreneurial journey began with a vision of creating a software-enabled company that combines automation with a deeply personal touch. And I'm going to ask her about that in a minute. What makes the Revury truly unique? It's powered by a team of moms who have built not just a business, but a community. And in just 3 years, they have scaled to serve consignments in 21 states, handling over 1,000 consignments while maintaining a 30 to 40% customer rate. Hey, Remington, thanks for being on the pod.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's fun to be here. You really nailed that introduction.
Yeah, my pleasure. I mean, you deserve it after all. So why don't you start to telling the audience more about yourself, your background, and of course, the company?
Yeah, happy to. As Brian mentioned, I'm Remington. I'm the CEO and the founder of the Reverie. The Reverie is an online platform to consign and shop designer fashion. So this could be equated to the Real or Poshmark, secondhand sites, so pre-owned items. What's unique about us is twofold. One, we are a tech-enabled platform. So what that means is that we have built our own custom software to help us inventory items, price items, fulfill orders, pay out our consigners. Everything has been custom built through our backend. And the second item to that is that we are a team of all moms. It was not intentionally set out that way. It kind of manifested itself. I'm sure we can dive deeper into that. But the Reverie is first and foremost a win-win-win platform because it's good for the environment, it's good for our consigners, and it's good for our customers who get great deals.
I'm sure the audience is as interested as me to ask you this question. How did you went from, the job as an attorney?
Yeah, everyone always asks that. It's kind of a funny story because I worked in fashion originally. I worked my way through undergrad and law school, working multiple jobs, one of them being in fashion sales. I was a sales associate for about 7 years. In law school itself, I took a lot of fashion-focused classes. So that means legal issues that present themselves uniquely to the fashion industry. So that could be, for example, models being considered talent versus employees. It could be counterfeit law. It could be intellectual property protection. It could be economics. So, for example, how do brands consolidate? How does that M&A structuring work? So various different aspects that kind of all touch on it. After law school, I headed up our law school's fashion symposium. So I was very involved in that. After law school, I joined a law firm called Buchalter that has one of the most prestigious book of clients of fashion apparel companies, where I got to work in a lot of corporate aspects for fashion clients. So that would mean securities, corporate governance, and compliance. But I would say my bread and butter was kind of in the M&A and security space. So that means, how do companies get capital to expand their operations or to scale, or if they want to acquire new assets or brands? I'm sure a lot of people know that nowadays fashion apparel companies usually have a parent company that own a lot of different brands. And then that gives them the economies of scale, right? They can share factories, they can share distributorships. They can then also spin off dead assets, non-performing brands. So that was kind of my wheelhouse. And at that time, around 2019, the Real was just circulating its prospectus to go public. And I remember reading through it and I just had this moment I think I can do it better. I wasn't fully impressed with what I was seeing. And just given how hot the market was, and it also happened to overlap with some personal things in my life. I really wanted a family. I wanted kids. My husband and I had been trying. We were both attorneys practicing really long hours. And my doctor was just like, you need to cut back on stress if you want to be able to carry to term. And so I just made this decision where I was like, I'm just going to quit and I'm going to try focus on my family. I'm going to, work on a business plan on my free time and just see where it goes. And, what was really cool is I was able to recruit 2 former execs from the Real Real and the head engineer from Stitch Fix to our board. I basically put them in a room and I was like, this is my hypothesis. I think that these are the issues that's wrong with the industry. I think it's incredibly labor intensive. I think that it's creating a lot of room of human error. I think our pricing is too subjective in the secondhand market. It needs to be an objective formula. And then I just pivoted to our director from Stitch Fix and I was like, is there a solution here for software to kind of fill in those gaps, these landmines that we can tell from the inside is blowing up the secondhand market? And he was like, absolutely. So the first thing we did, our first piece of software we built out was a pricing algorithm that basically took into account various different factors that a consumer would consider when making a purchase decision. So if you were to go buy these pair of shoes online, you'd want to know what's the brand, what's the size, what's the color, what kind of product is it? Is it a sneaker or a high heel? All of those affect the resale value of the product. And we just created an algorithm that would then price it. It would take into account all of these different factors and then tell us what the resale value is. And the intention on that is, 1, it removes subjectivity around one person versus another trying to price an item. 2, it makes it consistent. And 3, it makes it really streamlined. So as we grow, we don't have to train employees on how to price products. It's all done for us. And once we saw success with that, we just kept going and going. We started creating dashboards. We started creating inventory management systems. We started creating tracking and software solutions. Because with the resale market, even though you can have the same product, it's consigned by 2 different people. So you need to have an attribution system that allows you to track that product that sells and pay out that consignor. And there really isn't any of that in the market, at least not publicly. I'm sure that, these publicly traded companies like the Real has them an attribution model, but it's not accessible to any startups or any mom and pops or anybody who's just opening their own Shopify or Wix and wants to resell items. As we've grown and built that, the more data we get in, the better our software gets, the better it's trained, the more accurate it gets. And we're now at a point 3 years in where we've had a lot of success. And I'm getting other people reaching out to me being like, hey, I'm just graduating from college. I want to be in the resale market. Or, hey, I'm just finished up 20 years in insurance and, I love fashion and I want to get into this. Just so many different stories of people who are interested in the market. They see the growth and they want to get in. And it's so hard to do it because there isn't a great plug and play software solution to get off the ground. And my goal eventually is to be able to license it and help everybody out. Because at the end of the day, that's what I would have loved, is to have a plug and play solution so I could just sell my clothes and, create this business where I could be a mom and I could have a business and I wouldn't have to choose between career and kids, which is what I was facing in my career as an attorney. And I feel very grateful that I don't have to do now.
Okay, so I have a lot of questions on these, but
I know, I laid it all out.
before asking those questions, I wanted to address something you just said, about work-life balance. I'm a father too, father of twins, 5-year-old, a boy and a girl, and I know how tough it is to, juggle between those worlds. Do you believe in work-life balance? Many people on LinkedIn and every other place on the internet I read say it doesn't exist, or it's weekend, I'm working at something, super cool, and I mean, I'm always someone that says, you do you, and that's fine. But when people say, these lines, weekends you should work, this doesn't exist, and it's like, well, for me it does. So how do you take those comments? What do you think about that?
I guess how I would respond to that is just through experience. And here's my experience. I've been running this company now for 3 years. In the past 3 years, I've given birth twice. We have now grown to a $5 million valuation. I have taken 0 maternity, not one day of maternity with both of my children. I am currently halfway through a Series A fundraising with a 6-month-old baby, a 3-year-old toddler. My last pitch was 4 days before I delivered my child. and I end up closing 50,000 from that. So when people say work-life balance, I have a hard time separating work and life. I feel very ingratiated. I really identify with my work. I wouldn't say I ever take a day off. Truly, I'm always on emails every weekend. I was on emails in labor. That is for me. And I do not think that is universally applicable. I think I am just a very rare breed. But I do feel like I have a balance. Like I get to see my kids. And there are some times where I'm like, the next 2 hours, I'm logging off. I'm not checking emails, and I'm going to take my daughter to the pool or whatever it is, to her swim lessons. I do think it is important to carve out time in the exact same breath. I am not the type of person to be like, I have a work-life balance. I think I have a work life that still allows me to be a mom and have my career. And I wouldn't change that. So I don't think I answered your question, but
yeah, I think it's, we agree. I think it's like each person should do what they feel is right for them, right? I was with my laptop in the hospital when my twins were born as well. And after that, it was like, I started to stop doing that. Before the kids, I used to work, of course, holidays, weekends, nonstop, nights, days. I love working. But then I said, I probably in a few hours, they are going to be, they're getting out of school. So I'm going to pick them up. And then I continue working. But then, I do that break, to pick them up. And I don't need to go pick them up. My wife is going there already. But it's like, I want to, I want them to see my face when I go. It's like, I don't know why. Am I getting old? I don't know. But more sensitive? I don't know. But what I wanted to ask you is that in your case, it's kind of a unique situation. And correct me if I'm wrong at any point. But I'm saying it because you are a team full of, moms. So everyone is in the same or similar position, right?
Yeah. And I think actually what you're touching on goes to a bigger point, to a higher level. What we offer our employees is flexible work scheduling. You get to pick your hours, you get to pick your days. And some weeks you won't be able to give very much because your kid is sick or they have ortho appointments or whatever it is. Somebody's broke their arm. And then there's some weeks where you can give more, it fluctuates week to week. And the bigger point that I want to make is that we try to create a different type of corporate America that allows our employees to have the benefits of a 9-to-5 job without having to be 9-to-5. So what does that mean? It means we're a family-friendly office. If your daycare is closed, if it's half day at school, you can bring your kids into our office. On any given day, you might see 5 or 6 kids like running around here of all different ages. We also allow you to fix your hours. It's flexible. And what I want to see is I want to see America try and mirror that. I want to say, hey, Johnson & Johnson, we are a small startup with a fraction of the resources that you have, and yet we are still able to pull it off. And you know what? Not only are we pulling it off, but we're thriving. Because when I switched from a team of just employees who didn't have children to a team of moms, we had a 40% increase in productivity. So what that meant is we were able to book 40% more products within the same amount of time just by switching to a team of moms, because they're hardworking, they're multitaskers, they understand the value of time. So they know, okay, you know what? I'm only going to be able to give 3.5 hours today, but those 3.5 hours, I'm going to crank it out. Versus, I had somebody who was in a master's program and she spent 8 hours, but, she'd take an hour lunch or 30-minute coffee break, and like the value and the urgency of the time didn't seem as appreciative, and therefore I think the productivity lagged. Whereas if you give people a 3-hour shift, they need to crank it out because they're like, I only got 3 hours to get this all done. Like, oh shit. And that's what I found really successful with moms is if you can just accommodate them and give them just that ounce of flexibility that they need, they can really thrive. And we forget about how many talented people are sidelined or regulated being stay-at-home moms who might not want to be. If you want to be, that's amazing. And I fully endorse that. But if you didn't want to be, no one is giving them the ability to do anything else because childcare is so expensive. And it doesn't make sense to pay for childcare when you're going to be at a net loss with your salary. So how do we accommodate that? Well, I think it's a little bit on the companies to try and be more flexible. I'm not even saying change your pay, just change what you're willing to offer. change the timing, change the hours, either do a child subsidy or offer family-friendly offices where you can bring your kids in. There are so many ways to slice and dice this. And I think that our corporate structure has become so rigid that it's unable to try and even think outside of the box. Whereas here, as a startup, I mean, we're flying the seat of our pants and it really seems to be working. It's showing in our numbers, it's showing in our productivity, it's showing in our profitability, and it's showing in our employees. They're happy to be here. They get excited about waking up and coming to the day. It's not routine, it's not mundane. Every day is different. And we've got a really solid team here. So I would like to extend the challenge to corporate America to be like, look what I'm doing with no resources. Think about what you could do with all of the resources that you have and just make that a challenge. See what they can do to bounce that back. Because 50% of all graduate degrees are held by women. And we are regulating too much talent to the sidelines. Moms, I would argue, are the most undervalued asset and secret asset that corporate America has not tapped. It's right here. It's in your next door neighbor. All you have to do is just bend a little bit of your corporate bureaucracy structure, and I guarantee you
What would
they
you
would
tell, the companies listening to this or watching this right now that probably they are afraid of, taking this step forward and implement this? Maybe they are afraid of losing focus, concentration of the employees, or all kind of a lot of kids running around the office. So what could you tell them besides everything you just told them? How can they implement this in a way that can work for the team produce, as you said, not even the same, but probably more than they do without the kids?
I would say look at Patagonia. Patagonia is a company that has done incredibly well in terms of employee retention, employee family support, and they have reached huge success. And they, I think, are one of the guiding principles that we should all try to emulate. And they have been able to do co-working family spaces. They have built out huge opportunities for moms to work in their spaces and dads, parents of any type. And so I would say it would be small-minded to disregard it without trying. You take risks on your ads. Do you know how many of your ads probably aren't profitable? You take risks on talent that you might not have vetted fully. Think about how many employee turnovers you have in any given year. Now, if you were to allocate just 1% of that to moms, that is a big opportunity for you. That actually isn't so much a risk because you're already taking these risks in different forms of your business. And if I can tell you that this is a risk that could pay dividends in terms of productivity, decrease in costs, improvement in labor, employee satisfaction, employee retainment. Here's another question. How much time and money are you losing in resources from employee turnover? Because that's a big issue that we face in our industry. The Real's average, that's our big competitor, average employee turnover rate is 1.5 to 2 years. That means that they are going out and they have to spend time interviewing. They have to pay HR recruiters. They have to pay for ads on Indeed. They then have to train them. After all of those expenses, if you just put a little bit more investment into the employees you already have, and it doesn't have to be monetary. It could just be the capital of time, the capital of here's the trade-off with your family is a tradable resource that you have that doesn't actually go to your bottom line. And if you traded in different currencies and you just took the smallest risk, it's not actually as diversified. I mean, you're already taking these risks across all the other avenues of your business. And this is one that I think you would actually see real dividends from.
So I'll start with that.
I don't know if that.
Yeah, you did. So I'll let you catch your breath for a sec, and I will ask you a few questions, related to what you said previously. I told you that I had a few questions on that. So first off, you mentioned, that you were raising funds in a context that is not probably the most common thing for brands. People are struggling with that currently. So could you please tell the audience more about that? How did you? I mean, why are you doing that? How are you pulling that off successfully? And what are the key things they need to keep in mind to do it themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime that I talk to a founder, an entrepreneur, one of the biggest complaints that I hear is limited access to capital. And the thing is that capital is what dictates success and failure to some extent, right? The ability to scale your company, the ability to reinvest, the ability to take risks, to move into different avenues, all of that is dictated by how much capital do you have to deploy and where are you deploying it. And I mean, Fenwick is a big law firm that does a kind of quarterly update on where the capital markets are, right? How their M&A business is looking, how their securities is looking. And I mean, I think about 4 or 6 months ago, right before I gave birth to Bruce, they came out with a report that said that this capital climate is the hardest fundraising climate they've seen in the past 40 years. So what does that mean? That means past the Great Recession, what we are experiencing right now is the tightening of purse strings from VCs. Money is more expensive to get, it's harder to get, and it means that we have to be incredibly concise with how we're raising and how we're spending it, right? And for us, we have a really clear vision on what we're building and what that's going to do, right? And the biggest thing that I've noticed in the past 5 years is pre and post COVID. Pre-COVID, it was all about the unicorns. We want the highest valuation. We don't care about productivity or profitability. We just get us the biggest top line number you can get, and they were ignoring the bottom line. And I always have been suspect of that because at the end of the day, who wants to invest in a company that doesn't make money? But that's what we saw, right? Everybody was talking about the unicorn. What I think we need to be focusing on is the donkey, right? It's reliable, it's steady, it turns real profits. And that's how I phrase myself. I'm like, I'm not a unicorn, but you know what I have? I have a business that is productive, it is profitable, it's reliable. And in an argument, I would argue it's a safe bet. Because no matter what, the tech that you're investing in now can be licensed, it can be redeployed. It is something that genuinely improves the market, right? So I would tell advice to anybody that you are selling yourself, be realistic. Back in the day, everybody wanted those big inflated numbers. That's not the market we're playing in anymore. You need to be realistic, not only with your prospective investors, but with yourself. What numbers do you actually think you can hit? And what growth paths do you actually see going forward, right? Because that's what people want. They want real results. And the bottom line, they want profitability. Every investor pitch that I've had in the past 6 months, one of the first questions out of their mouth is, are you profitable? Have you hit profitability? When are you hitting profitability? And that is an indicator of what investors want to see. So start with that. Start there. Even if you're not profitable now, because it does take businesses, they generally say 3 to 5 years as a startup to hit profitability. But be honest, be realistic, and give a clear vision. Tell them why whatever it is that you're building is the next best thing. It is changing the market. It is valuable. Because at the end of the day, the value is what you're selling, right? That's what's going to get you that big premium valuation, that 10x that VCs want to see, is what are you building that creates value? And it's hard. It's really, really hard. I'll tell you, I've had doors shut in my face. I got this close to closing a deal, and then they saw that I was 9 months pregnant, and they walked away. So it's not easy.
How many times did you pitch investors? Just to give context, to people listening, until you got the first yes.
Yeah. I would say I did at least 50 pitches before I got a first yes. 50. Yep. Yeah. And, I flew to San Francisco and I just started knocking on VC's doors and walking in with a pitch deck and just starting presenting. And they're like, one guy was like, I'm just an intern. I can't help you. Those are the things that you have to do, is you have to knock on doors. And the thing is like, you might get one no, but it's a no but. So I always tell people there is no such thing as a missed opportunity. Whoever you met, if they say no, ask them for another name. Say, sure, you're no, but who else do you know? Somebody else in your network will see the value in this. If you believe in it, and you, the founder, really believe in it, then somebody will. It's just a matter of finding the people that align with you. And as a female, it's a little harder because less than 2% of all VC funding goes to women, despite women holding at least 50% of all graduate degrees. So women do tend to have an extra hurdle. But I think if you can walk away from any meeting, any Zoom pitch, anything you have, walk away with one name. That's all you have to do. Say, no, thank you for your time. Is there one other person that you can refer me to or recommend me to? I'd love to share this idea with them. And eventually you'll get the yes. If you really do have something viable and believe that you believe in,
Yeah.
You'll get there. You just have to keep pounding
100%.
the
Yeah.
ground.
And you mentioned something that was probably the common theme throughout the whole year. It was profitability. It was not a theme in previous
Mm,
years for some reason, because, as you said,
yeah,
brands, VCs, everyone was ignoring it. And I think, of course, we can talk about that with today's newspaper, but, you know, it's a mistake because, as you said, it can take a while to get to a profitability standpoint, but some brands didn't even care about that. And now
yeah,
they didn't even know how to track that, probably to emphasize on
yeah,
that. And now is probably the common theme is how are we profitable even on the first purchase, which is tougher these days with the acquisition costs going up,
yeah,
all over the place. Is how can we be creative and you know get to a profitable first order, and of course how can we boost our sort of value to achieve that. Otherwise, how can we decrease the time between orders and of course increase lifetime value, right? But decreasing the time between orders. And I think there's, when you ask yourself as a brand owner, CMO, etc., those questions, there's a lot there's a lot of information that you are missing unless you have certain pieces of tech. For instance, Shopify doesn't tell you the time between orders, right? It doesn't tell you a lot of things that brands probably don't know, right? And all they know is the top line revenue, and now they're trying to understand the bottom line. So even if you're not raising money as
yeah,
a brand founder, I think it's important that once and for all, first, you know your numbers, and second, try to reach profitability as soon as possible.
yeah. It's funny you say that because the first 2 years of our business, we actually didn't do any paid marketing. None. No online ads. Everything we did was either SEO, referral, or just completely organic. And the way we did that was building a really strong, sticky presence on social media and going offline. Like, you have to remember, this was COVID. So, trying to buy ad space online was incredibly expensive because everybody was forced to be online. So what I did was I just went out on street corners and I put up a rack and I was like, I'm selling clothes. And it was not glamorous. It was not glamorous. It was not beautiful. It was grunt work. It was really grueling. It was long days. I would sit on a street corner for 6 to 8 hours. And I would just, with my mask and, social distancing, and I would just let people look at the clothes and then bring them up right there on the spot. And, I think we've now seen this new community of like pop-up markets. That didn't exist pre-COVID. Now you see them everywhere, outdoor mall spaces, you're seeing them in parking lots, you're seeing it at farmers markets. But that, I don't know if you guys remember that didn't really exist pre-COVID. And that's how we got our launch. We just went to different markets and popped up, and it was grueling. Some days I would sell one item and that would suck. I made $60 for 8 hours in the sun. But that's how we grew. And the thing is even if they didn't buy something there, we would then see a boost of traffic online. They would go online to check out what we had. And then we'd also get referrals. And then all of a sudden we started seeing our social media numbers tick up. A friend told a friend told a friend. And all of a sudden we're moving up in Google rankings just from that word of mouth of people driving traffic to our site through an offline presence. And that costs us $0. You know what it costs? It costs your time. And time is expensive. Do not get me wrong on that. But if you are a struggling startup and you are trying to make profitability on that first sale, on every sale, your time is what you're going to have to give, or you're going to spend money on ads. And again, ads are risky because they're expensive. The customer acquisition costs are only going up. Facebook and Meta constantly are changing their algorithms. So once you have a hit formula, the next week it can change. So if you want something stable and cheap and probably a pretty likely return on your investment, I would say you have to put the pound to the ground. You've got to go and just physically be out there and selling your name. And like I said, it's not glamorous.
It comes with many benefits. I mean, this year I was invited to speak in front of some beautiful e-commerce communities, and what the first thing in the presentation was, it was about the 10 things that top brands are doing based on the conversations that I have had these last few years and the clients we work with at the agency. And the first one was, there weren't any tricks or tactics or magic ones or whatever. It was all, principles that were always there. And the first one was that sell it offline, like sell your products offline. And we had some founders here on the pod that went to Central Park. They sell bags, and they were holding a sign saying, "Ask us about our bags." And that comes with many benefits. And it's, first off, the non-scalable things are necessary, as Jack Ma, the Alibaba's founder, once said. These days, even non-scalable efforts could be scalable. You can go viral. You can record yourself
Yeah.
doing that and then publish it on TikTok, and boom, you have 1 million views for 500K views or whatever, right? And second, you not only get to sell your products, but you get to interact with your customers. Third, by interacting with your customers, you can, in their case, they sell bags. So it was like, hey, does it have a bigger pocket? Or probably the pocket is too small, or the strap is too thick or too thin, or whatever. So you get to interact with customers and get more insights that you don't get as easily online, right? Plus, recently we have a newsletter too, and I was posting there and on LinkedIn recently about the fact that, to me at least, the e-commerce part makes brands lazy. In this case, you're saying something key that not probably most of brand founders are not willing to do. If you have a brick and mortar store, not an e-commerce, a brick and mortar store, and you're not getting foot traffic, you're going to hand out flyers, partner up with local shops, etc. But in this case, you have an e-commerce. I'm not getting traffic. I'm not getting sales. Go there. Talk to your customers. Try to get sales offline. It's part of the job too.
Yeah, it is. And I think you highlighted a lot of great points in terms of the intangible benefits that you get from, the idea that we are online. Social media is always existing now, and your offline efforts still can be taken online, and the ability to get feedback from your customer on spot. People love to be part of that growth process, of that journey of like, oh, we help mold that product, like we put feedback. I am constantly, if you follow us on Instagram, I am constantly on our stories like, guys, I need your help. Do you want email messages or text messages? Like, do you like this? Like, are we making consigning easy enough? Like, I am constantly online being like, I need your feedback. I need your help. And it's true. I do. Because, we have this amazing resource of people who interact with our product and our site every day. Like, why are we not capitalizing on that? I don't need to have a team of internal people trying guessing ideas. Just go ask.
Exactly. You brought up a great point. Like, why assume when you can ask? And social media is, two-way street. You can not only post what you want, but you can get feedback from people. Now is as easy as it gets. It wasn't that easy before, and now it's really easy to get feedback. So I wanted to ask you something. For those founders hesitant, of getting themselves out there and generate, let's say, founder-led content. How do you probably organize yourself to record content? How many hours a week do you block out to record content? How many pieces of content do you release a week or so? And what are the benefits in your eyes, at least, from the...
I spend at least 2 hours a day doing content every day. So that'd be 7 days a week. We are an incredibly online company, meaning like our social presence drives a lot of our traffic and sales. So I would say it's essential to, what we do. I would say I do at least 2 hours every day. And that means, social media posts, recording videos, anything that tries to help boost our SEO or gets us a viral, spin. We work with a lot of content creators, like as ambassadorships. We like to do a lot of collaborations. So I do a lot of reach out and negotiation back and forth with influencers. It's I think something you can't ignore nowadays. If you have a startup, I think you have to be on social channels. And sometimes that's tedious. And like, for example, I'm an attorney by trade. Content creation is not in my normal wheelhouse of things. If you told me 5 years ago, I'm going to be spending 2 hours a day, like negotiating with influencers and like editing shoes, I'd be like, you're crazy. But it's a reality of life in today's era, and you have to meet customers where they are, and that's where they are. They're on socials. So Even if you hate it and it's a grind, it
Yeah,
is important to
I
do.
I had the pleasure of interviewing, amazing founders such as yourself, and many of them, 8-figure, 9-figure brands. Their founders say, one of them recently said something that was something like, I wake up every day thinking about the highest lever action for my day, and that's making TikToks. So every day I'll wake up and I'll block time to record TikToks because that's my highest lever action these days. And it's the founder of a multi 8-figure brand. And who knew, right? Back in the day, founders and CEOs were behind the desk all day, giving orders, pointing fingers. And these days, even though they do that too, they, in a good way, they manage teams, they lead. This is part of, leading the way because you no longer lead internally, you can lead externally too.
Yeah. And I think in a lot of senses, people like to see the founders
Okay.
on the
Yeah.
social platforms. I think Faraday is a clothing brand that I think does a really good job of the founders being really present in their socials. I think customers want to put their dollars in something they believe in. If you share your story, if you share your face and your family, I think that resonates with people, and they're more likely to support your brand. In another way, I do think it is competitively advantageous to be there, even though it's hard and it takes a lot of work. Like any influencer will tell you, it does get mundane every day in and out to be posting and content creating. It's exhausting, but I don't think in today's era you can really be successful without it.
Exactly. Well,
So
I
I
really
get
love our
that.
conversation. I think you brought some amazing topics to the table and different from many that we have discussed here in 2024. So I'm super happy this was the last episode of the year. I think we covered a lot of things that matter these days to grow a
You
business.
handed me.
And yeah, before you go, I wanted to ask you, where can people go to learn more about you and the company?
Sorry, can you say that last question again? I got distracted by this cute face.
Hey, wow.
He spoke up
That's
from his
all
nap,
right.
so I thought he.
Bruce,
This is
hey,
Bruce.
Bruce.
This is Bruce. He's our newest addition. He's a hi. Yeah. He's so confused as to what's going on. Yeah, I know. But I missed the
No,
question. I'm
no
sorry, I
worries,
got
no worries.
distracted.
This is probably a perfect way to end the episode with Bruce right here. I wanted to say, thank you, and that you kindly tell the audience where they can go to learn more about you and your company.
Absolutely. You guys can go follow us online. We are an online website, so it's www.therevury.com. That's spelled Revury. And that's the same with our socials. So Instagram is at the Reverie, TikTok at the Reverie. And again, we always spell the Reverie a little different. It's Revury. So think like real, validated luxury.
Amazing. Yeah. So, as always, if you're not there, you can go to the DTCinsider.com. And when you find the episode, you will see all the show notes, including all the social handles and their website. Remington, and why not Bruce? Thank you both for being here on the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
This episode was brought to you by BSR Digital. We help DTC brands grow through paid ads and email marketing campaigns. If you'd like us to help your business grow, head on over to bsrdigital.com and schedule a call with us.